Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire, had everything: power, wealth, status. Yet, every morning he reminded himself that he was just a man, bound by time and duty. He did not wake up for luxury, but for service, to himself, to his people, to virtue. So, let me ask you, what do you wake up for? A warrior does not step into battle without sharpening his sword. An athlete does not enter the arena without stretching his muscles. Why then would you enter your day without first training your mind? Your morning habits are the weights that strengthen your discipline, resilience, and focus. Every great story has a moment where everything shifts. A single day where a decision changes the course of a life. The Stoics teach us that this moment could be any morning, even today. If you woke up knowing this was the day that defined your future, how would you live it? A morning wasted leads to a day lost. The first hour is the foundation upon which everything else stands. The Stoics understood this truth and crafted their mornings with precision, because they knew that winning the morning meant winning life. Epictetus was born a slave, yet he became one of the greatest teachers of resilience and wisdom. He had no control over his circumstances, but he did have control over his mind. Each morning you have the same choice: complain about what you lack or take control of what you can. Today we're going to uncover 7 powerful Stoic routines that will set the tone for a day of clarity, discipline, and purpose. These aren't just morning habits. They are ancient practices, tested by time, that can transform the way you approach life itself. By the end of this, you won't just have a routine, you'll have a philosophy to wake up to. Let's begin. Number 1. Discover purpose in every morning. Each morning, as the sun rises and the world awakens, we are given something invaluable: another chance. But how often do we truly recognize this? How often do we open our eyes and ask ourselves, why am I awake today? Most of us slip into the day unconsciously, carried forward by habit, burdened by yesterday, and anxious about tomorrow. Yet the present moment, the very breath we take in now, is where our power lies. And so, our first duty is not to rush, not to react, but to remember, to remind ourselves why we rise. Marcus Aurelius, the great emperor and philosopher, wrote to himself, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work. As a human being, what do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for?" These words are not simply about duty. They are about discovering the purpose in each morning. We are not here by accident, and our waking hours are not to be squandered in distraction or hesitation. There is work to be done, not just the tasks of daily life, but the greater work of living with meaning. The question then becomes, what will we do with this day? Will we allow ourselves to be pulled in every direction by impulse and circumstance, or will we take the reins and decide? Before the world makes demands of us, we must first set our own intention. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that our actions, no matter how small, must be directed towards something greater than ourselves. Whether it is to become wiser, to serve others, to refine our character, or simply to endure with grace, each day must be anchored to a purpose. This does not mean that every morning must be spent in grand contemplation. Purpose is not found in complexity. It is found in clarity. It is the quiet decision to be better than yesterday, to meet challenges with resilience, to walk our path with integrity. Seneca reminds us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. The minutes we lose in hesitation, in distraction, in regret, These are minutes stolen from our own lives, and if we are to live fully, we must learn to reclaim them. So, as we wake, let us take a moment to sit in silence, to acknowledge that we have been given another day, and to ask ourselves, what will we make of it? Let us not wait for meaning to find us, but instead forge it through the choices we make. The purpose of our morning is not something distant, something beyond our reach. It is already within us, waiting to be lived. Number 2, prepare the night before. If we wish to master our mornings, we must first master our nights. What we do before we sleep determines what kind of day we will wake up to. Yet how often do we stumble into the night mindlessly, carrying with us the weight of unfinished tasks, distractions that rob us of rest, and worries that blur the clarity of the next day. We close our eyes, hoping that morning will somehow be different, that motivation will strike, that discipline will suddenly appear. But the truth is simple. Tomorrow is built today. Seneca warned us of this when he said, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours." We speak of change, of growth, of purpose, but then we leave it to chance, as if the future is something that will gift itself to us without effort. This is the mistake of the unprepared. If we truly seek to live with intention, then our nights must become the foundation upon which our mornings stand. Let us begin with the simplest of actions. Before sleep claims us, we should take a moment to reflect, not in regret nor in self-punishment, but in honest review. What did we do today? Did we move toward who we wish to become, or did we waste our hours on distractions and impulses? Epictetus advised, "Don't just say you have read books. Show that through them you have learned to think better, to be a more discriminating and reflective person." The same applies to our days. It is not enough that we lived through them, we must learn from them. Then there is the matter of order. A mind that rests in chaos wakes in confusion. If we end the night in disorder, the morning will greet us with the same. Let us put away what needs to be put away. Let us set out what we will need. Remove unnecessary obstacles. Clear the space around us so that when dawn arrives, we meet it without resistance. This is not trivial. It is a declaration of intent. And then we must rest. True rest, not the shallow kind that comes from mere exhaustion, but the kind that renews. The mind cannot be sharp if it is dulled by restlessness, by the glow of endless distractions, by the lingering stress of an untamed day. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Sleep is not a surrender, it is a preparation. It is the final act of control before we release ourselves to the unknown of another day. So, let us prepare, not out of fear, but out of discipline. Let us shape our night so that when morning comes, we do not wake as victims of circumstance, but as architects of our own beginning. Number 3. Avoid morning distractions and embrace serenity. The first moments of the morning belong to us. They are untouched, untainted, a rare silence before the world intrudes. But how often do we waste them? How often do we surrender them to noise, to distractions, to impulses that pull us away from clarity? The moment we wake, the world competes for our attention. Messages, news, demands, and trivialities disguised as urgency. We reach for our devices. We drown ourselves in noise. And before we have even taken our first deep breath of the day, our minds are already scattered, fragmented, lost. This is how we willingly forfeit our peace. This is how we let the world dictate the course of our thoughts before we have even had the chance to claim them for ourselves. But must we? Must we allow ourselves to be dragged from one thought to the next, from one distraction to another, like leaves tossed in the wind? Marcus Aurelius warned against this when he wrote, "If you do not have a consistent goal in life, you will be forever distracted by trivial things. And what is a morning if not the beginning of that goal? If we let our first moments be governed by distraction, then how can we expect the rest of our day to be any different?" We must guard the sanctity of our mornings as we would guard something sacred. Before we let the world in, we must first establish ourselves. The moment we wake, before we reach for the noise, we must sit in stillness. We must allow our minds to breathe before they are pulled in 100 different directions. Seneca reminds us, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. If we begin the day scattered, we will spend the day lost. Let us not deceive ourselves into thinking that every distraction is harmless. Each moment spent mindlessly scrolling, indulging in empty stimulation, responding to every small impulse. These are not just minor distractions. They are the slow erosion of our discipline. They chip away at our focus, at our ability to think deeply, at our power to be present. The cost is greater than we realize. Instead, let us embrace the quiet. Let us give ourselves a space in the morning that is untouched by the noise of the world. A moment to breathe, to reflect, to exist without reacting. This is not about avoidance, it is about control. It is about deciding deliberately what deserves our attention. It is about training our minds not to be servants to every distraction, but masters of their own direction. If we begin the day with intention, if we choose clarity over chaos, then we set a course that no external force can easily shake. But if we surrender our mornings, we surrender our days, and if we surrender our days, we surrender our lives. So, let us wake not as prisoners to distraction, but as guardians of our own mind. Number 4, wake up consistently and build a powerful routine. The way we wake up sets the course of our lives. Yet how often do we treat it as something trivial, something to be negotiated with? We hit the snooze button, we delay the inevitable, we resist the very act of rising. But what does this say about us? What does it mean when our first action of the day is to retreat, to postpone, to shrink from duty? If we cannot command ourselves in the smallest of acts, how will we ever master the greater challenges that life presents? Each morning is a test of discipline, a battle between what is easy and what is necessary. When we choose to wake with consistency, without hesitation, we are doing more than getting out of bed. We are declaring to ourselves that we are in control. We are rejecting the indulgence of laziness, the temptation of delay. Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations reminds us of this struggle. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, "I have to go to work." As a human being, what do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for? The things for which I was brought into the world. If we recognize that life itself is our duty, then why should we meet the day with reluctance? Discipline is not built in a single moment. It is forged through repetition, through habit, through the quiet commitment to show up every day, regardless of how we feel. The body resists, the mind makes excuses, but we are not merely flesh, nor are we slaves to comfort. We are something greater, something capable of rising beyond these impulses. The power of routine is not in its convenience, but in its transformation. When we wake at the same time each day, We are teaching ourselves consistency, resilience, and structure. We are building a foundation upon which all other virtues can stand. Seneca warns us, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." What greater adversity is there than the battle within, the war between who we are and who we strive to become? To wake up with intention is to face this struggle and emerge victorious, no matter how small the act may seem. And yet many will dismiss this. They will say, "It is only sleep, only a few minutes more, only a minor indulgence." But small indulgences accumulate. They shape us in ways we do not see until we find ourselves lacking discipline in moments that matter most. If we cannot rise when we say we will, how can we trust ourselves to act when the stakes are higher? Each morning is an opportunity, a moment where we decide whether we will command the day or let the day command us. Let us not surrender that choice. Let us wake not as prisoners of comfort, but as warriors of intention. Number 5. Small acts of discipline build a virtuous life. Discipline is not forged in grand moments of decision, nor is it something we stumble upon in times of crisis. It is built quietly in the small, unseen moments of our daily lives. Every morning we are presented with a choice, to act with purpose or to surrender to impulse. Most people wait for a great test to prove their strength, not realizing that strength is not something to be summoned in a single instant. It is something cultivated through the smallest acts of self-command. H.S. Harting. Consider the simplicity of making your bed, of standing tall instead of slouching, of choosing water over indulgence, of putting things back where they belong. These are minor tasks, insignificant on their own, yet together they shape the character of a person who is in control of themselves. If we fail in these small things, how can we expect to stand firm in greater challenges? Epictetus once said, "You must build up your life action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible." This is how discipline is formed, not in some distant future, but in the moment at hand. Most of us believe we lack discipline because we have not yet mastered the great challenges of life. But discipline does not begin with the great, it begins with the small. A soldier does not win battles because he is suddenly brave in war. He wins because he has trained his body and mind to obey him long before the battle begins. A philosopher does not find wisdom in a single flash of insight, but in the repeated practice of examining his own thoughts. We become disciplined in the same way, by mastering the smallest details of our lives until they no longer require force, only habit. Seneca tells us, "Well-being is attained by little and little, and nevertheless is no little thing itself." If we seek a life of virtue, of strength, of unwavering self-mastery, we must first prove ourselves in the ordinary. The way we do one thing is the way we do everything. A person who cuts corners in small matters will do so in great ones. A person who cannot command themselves in the morning will find it harder to command themselves in moments of true hardship. If we do not train ourselves in the mundane, we will falter in the extraordinary. We often tell ourselves that discipline is difficult, that it requires suffering. But what is more difficult? The slight discomfort of acting with self-control, or the heavy burden of regret when we fail to? If we do not master ourselves, we will be mastered by something else, by distraction, by weakness, by the forces of the world that care nothing for our growth. Discipline is a practice, not a punishment. It is a gift we give ourselves, a way to ensure that when life tests us, we are ready. And life will test us. It is testing us even now. Let us prove ourselves, not with words, but with action. Number 6. Practice negative visualization and prepare for challenges. Most people wake up hoping for an easy day. They pray for smooth paths, for comfort, for nothing to go wrong. But we know better. Life does not promise us ease, nor should we expect it. Instead, we must prepare for what is inevitable: challenges, setbacks, losses. To live well is not to avoid difficulty, but to be ready for it, to stand firm when the storm arrives, and it will arrive. Before the day begins, we must take a moment to imagine what could go wrong, not to dwell in fear, but to strengthen ourselves. We may face delays, frustrations, insults, or failures. We may lose something we cherished. We may be tested in ways we do not expect. But if we have already considered these possibilities, if we have already lived them in our minds, they will not break us. Seneca wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." By preparing for the worst, we rob misfortune of its sting. Some would call this pessimism. It is not. It is the highest form of wisdom. We do not control the world, only our response to it. If we expect life to be easy, we will always be disappointed. But if we train our minds to meet hardship with calm, we become untouchable. A man who has rehearsed adversity does not crumble when it arrives. He stands as he always has, steady and prepared. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness.'" He did not say this to fill his heart with resentment, but to remind himself that he must not be surprised. When difficulty comes, it is not an interruption of life. It is life itself. The wise do not complain, they adapt. This practice does not make us bitter. On the contrary, it makes us grateful. When we imagine losing what we have, we return to reality with a deeper appreciation for it. We cherish the warmth of the sun, the presence of those we love, the simple ability to breathe and move. The things we take for granted are not guaranteed, and by recognizing this, we see how much we truly have. Epictetus said, "Fortify yourself with contentment, for this is an impregnable fortress." When we embrace the fragility of life, we stop clinging to illusions and start living with clarity. Let us not wait for misfortune to teach us strength. Let us prepare now. Let us practice in our minds what we will say, how we will act, how we will endure. Let us be ready for loss, so that when it comes, we are not shattered but resolute. If we do this, no day will ever catch us off guard. We will walk through the world not as those who fear it, but as those who are unshaken by its storms. Number 7. End with gratitude and reflect on the day's gifts. As the day comes to a close and the world settles into silence, we are left with nothing but our own thoughts. This is the moment to reflect, to ask ourselves, did we live today well, or did we waste it, lost in trivial worries, caught in the illusion that we are owed another sunrise? Time slips through our fingers like sand, yet we seldom pause to acknowledge the gifts each day has given us. Gratitude is not about forcing ourselves to be positive. It is about seeing clearly, stripping away entitlement, and realizing how much we have before it is taken from us. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Do not indulge in dreams of having what you do not have, but reckon up the greatest of the blessings you do possess, and remember how fervently you would have longed for them if they were not yours. If they were not yours." We often chase after what is missing while ignoring what is already in our hands. How foolish it is to mourn what we lack instead of cherishing what we have. The practice of gratitude is a discipline, a conscious effort to end each day by acknowledging life's gifts, both grand and small. The roof over our heads, the food that sustained us, the people who stood beside us, even the struggles that sharpened us. These are not owed to us, and yet we were given them today. We must not let this truth go unnoticed. Seneca warned, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." We complain as if we have forever, as if life will always offer us more, but nothing is promised. Everything we hold dear can be lost in an instant. This is why we must reflect each night, not just on what went wrong, but on what went right. Did we face a challenge that made us stronger? Did we witness an act of kindness? Did we experience a moment, however brief, of beauty? To appreciate these things is to live fully. To ignore them is to sleepwalk through existence, blind to life's fleeting nature. Gratitude is not weakness. It does not make us complacent. It makes us aware. It grounds us in what is real. It humbles us. And most of all, it prepares us for whatever comes next. Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." When we cultivate this mindset, we no longer live in a state of endless craving, always reaching for more while ignoring what is already ours. We end the day not with restlessness, but with peace. And so, as we close our eyes tonight, let us not drift into sleep without a moment of reflection. Let us acknowledge the gifts of this day, knowing that they were never owed to us. If we wake tomorrow, we will do so with a heart that is not empty, but full.